Hello. I would like to talk to you a little bit about this category of support and reasoning. Last week, we looked at this whole map, right, of sophisticated writing and thinking, and I briefly touched on this. Now I'd like to spend a little bit more time on this category. If we look at evidence or we look at support in writing, that evidence, that support, doesn't just exist by itself. It is clothed in some sort of reasoning process. And so what I'm giving you here are different modes of reasoning, different ways, different patterns by which we explain our logic. So let me run through some of these and let me show you some examples in the reading that you have done so that you have a better understanding of the sorts of sophisticated strategies you can embed in the writing that you'll be doing for this unit. So the first one I'd like to touch on is multiple small examples, and that's numerous examples in a single paragraph. Take a look at this article that you read for last week. In the first paragraph, Graff writes, "We tend to assume that intellectual distinction can be manifested only with bookish subject matter. That is, that it's possible to wax intellectual about Plato, Shakespeare, the French Revolution, and nuclear fission, but not about cars, clothing fashions, dating, sports, TV, or Bible Belt religion." Notice just how many multiple small examples have been embedded in this one sentence. That's one way of helping to provide support. Number two is the extended example, an example that runs through multiple paragraphs. And again, we can go back to this piece. And if we were to read through the whole piece, we would notice that Gerald Graff is actually bringing in a lot of information from his own life experience. But specifically, he's bringing in a lot of information about sports. Sports runs from page 1 to page 8. Sports serves as an extended example. Next, we've got compare and contrast. And with compare and contrast, one can compare small examples to an extended example or small examples to other small examples. Right? The idea is we see that these ways of reasoning start to overlap. And again, I want to return to that first sentence in the first the sentence in the first paragraph. We tend to assume that intellectual distinction can be manifested only with bookish subject matter. That is, that it's possible to wax intellectual about Plato, Shakespeare. Notice he puts Plato and Shakespeare on one side of it, and then he contrasts Plato and Shakespeare to other small examples on the other side, to cars and clothing fashions, dating, sports, etc. So we see this clear comparison and contrast being used. Cause and effect. One can look for cause for every claim that you make, right? I mean, think of the word because. The cool thing here is anytime that you're writing a claim for a body paragraph and you're unsure where to go, you can think of that claim as the effect. And you can ask yourself, how did we get to this position? Again, if we go back to this hidden intellectualism text, you'll see that he uses this mode as well. In this paragraph here, he writes, "It was in arguing about toughness and other such concerns with my friends, I think, that I started acquiring rudiments of how to make an argument." Pause. Acquiring rudiments of how to make an argument is the effect. That's the claim. And he thinks, well, how did I arrive at that point? And he's got this reasoning here, right? He's got the cause. It was arguing about toughness with his friends. Process analysis. Let's bake a cake. Let me ask you to take a moment and think about how you would explain baking a cake. I imagine some of you think, well, okay, you need to get flour, right? Or you need to take out some eggs and put them somewhere. But if we were to pick up a box of cake mix and look at the instructions on the side, right? The way that that information is given to us is very organized, right? There's actually a step-by-step process that is explained. And so for us, we can think of that step-by-step process as being yet another mode of reasoning. Here's a way of thinking that we can embed in our paragraphs to help people understand how we arrive at the claims that we do. Formal logic. Socrates is a man. All men are mortal. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Notice, right, that it's almost like a mathematical equation here. And for a lot of us, when we bring in outside direct textual support, this is the sort of thinking that we put in after, when we explain how that support is working, right? We're using real logic to get the audience to understand how we arrive at the ideas that we do. Argument by definition. Define term, use the definition in your reasoning. This is huge. I imagine that almost all of you are going to be defining terms in this next unit. We talked about this briefly last week when we talked about using successful, in that if you want to be successful, then go to college. You cannot continue with that conversation without defining what you mean by success, right? There are so many terms out there that have multiple interpretations or multiple meanings that you have to clarify exactly how you understand and will then use that term. And the last one for right now, argument by analogy. Explain one thing via another with which audience is familiar. So if you've been listening to me for the last 5 minutes and these ideas are starting to blur and it sounds like I'm just talking and talking, you may think to yourself that I sound like a broken record. Well, there you go. Broken record. There's the analogy. Hope this helps. Talk to you later.